Always look forward to spending time with Adam Schuster, Senior Director of Budget and Tax Research with Illinois Policy for any reason, but today's a particularly good reason. And by the way, as I always say about illinoispolicy.org, they are a site you should have at the top of your bookmarks and visit it frequently because that site is loaded with really, really great information, criticisms, and more importantly, solutions on how to make things better. Adam, good morning to you.
Good morning, Riley. Thanks for having me on to talk to voters about the first time they're voting on taxes in about 50 years.
Yep, I'm glad to have you here because as far as I go, the experts on this thing, you are the guy. You are the guy I lean on for all of this information. And, we've talked about it off and on. The final push for the fair tax is out. And, one of my neighbors was out yesterday and he said to me, so I got to ask you, this fair tax, which way are you going on it? And I looked at him, I said, well, how trusting are you of our lawmakers down in Springfield to do the right thing? And he said, so it's a no then, right? I said, so it's a no then, right? Yep. That's all it took was just to consider what we've been through in the past and then look toward the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of putting it. How much do you trust Illinois politicians? Because essentially the proposal before voters today is a bait-and-switch proposal, in my opinion. It is, the governor has spent nearly $60 million, much of it his own money, about $58 million of his own money, on promoting this campaign of just misleading information. And a lot of people are confused. I mean, I'm hearing from people when they go to the ballot, first of all, it's not called the fair tax. It just says proposed amendment to the Illinois Constitution. And people need to be aware of that because, they might not know how to vote going in. But more importantly, voters are not voting on a set of rates. Voters are not voting on making millionaires and billionaires pay more in taxes. The rates could change at any time with a simple majority vote by the Illinois General Assembly. The only thing voters are deciding is whether or not to give new taxing powers, permanent taxing powers, to Illinois politicians that would make it easier for them to put the burden of their financial mismanagement on the backs of middle-class taxpayers and seniors' retirement income.
But at the same time, it's being pitched to you through this $58 billion donation through the governor and others is, oh, come on. It's finally time that millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. Look, a guy who says he's a Republican and a guy who says he's a Democrat sitting together. What more do you want?
Yeah, and that's why it's so confusing. I mean, we had to file a lawsuit because, unfortunately, the ballot question, the actual description on the ballot reads like an advertisement in favor of the amendment rather than a neutral description. People are not actually even seeing the language, the constitutional language that they're voting on. But, the bottom line is that this is a tax hike, that it gives increased powers to our politicians to hike everyone's taxes in the future. It makes it easier for them to do so time and time again. And then it would hike taxes on 100,000 Illinois small businesses, including restaurants, who are struggling with a new round of shutdown orders. And, many of them are worried about going out of business. And I think, people have a choice in front of them about, what's the future of Illinois going to be? Are we going to continue to double down on this same failed tax hike strategy where year after year our politicians come back to us to ask for more money? Or are we going to stand up and in a unified voice tell them enough is enough, we pay enough, it's time to fix your spending and get your actual finances under control rather than just, coming to us for bailout after bailout.
After bailout after bailout. One of the things that I learned at your site at illinoispolicy.org, and my wife and I discussed this, to which she responded, wait, what? Really? Local municipalities could be more likely to levy city income taxes to make up a budget deficit. The original language of the Fair Tax Amendment explicitly banned local income taxes in Illinois, but lawmakers removed that protection before passing this plan to voters.
That's exactly right. This really is Pandora's box of taxation. The constitutional amendment it has nothing to do with fairness. All it does is remove all of the taxpayer protections from the existing Constitution that make it harder to raise taxes or set limits on raising taxes. The original amendment, like you said, would have prohibited city income taxes. That was removed at the last minute. The original amendment also would have said that higher rates could only be charged to higher income levels with lower rates for lower income levels, but they took that out. That's nowhere in the amendment. And 18 of the 32 states with a progressive tax hit the middle class with the highest possible rate. So when you see things like they're removing these protections, even from their own first draft of the amendment, they're opening the door to city income taxes in places where local governments are struggling with budget deficits, places like Rockford, places like Chicago.
Sure.
They're making it easier for these local governments to impose those taxes in the future.
That in itself is just stunning. And now you mentioned the other states with a graduated or quote unquote fair tax system. We're told, oh, don't worry about your retirement income. Oh, that's just a bunch of bluster. It's millionaires and billionaires trying to trick you. Well, of the 32 states who've got this graduated tax system, how many of them tax retirement income?
All 32. Every single state with a graduated income tax taxes some form of retirement income. And, this is one where I think it's actually kind of funny. It's almost gaslighting, right? They're accusing us of being misleading for admitting the truth that the progressive tax paves the way to taxing retirement income in Illinois for the first time. And they're accusing us of being misleading for saying that. But the fact of the matter is that argument originated with their side, right? That argument originated with people like Democratic Treasurer Michael Frericks, with, former Democratic candidate for governor and state senator Daniel Biss, with 3 current members of Governor Pritzker's administration. They used to sell this, believe it or not, as a selling point. They used to try to promote the progressive tax on the fact that it made it easier to tax retirement income. Now they've realized how unpopular it is, and they're running away from it and trying to deny the fact that it opens the door to taxing seniors' nest eggs. And again, this argument originated with them. It's a fact that all 32 states do this, and the last state that adopted a progressive tax, Connecticut, back in 1996, hit their seniors very hard, hit their Social Security very hard. And as a result, if Illinois had taxed retirement income the same way as Connecticut, we would have lost about 11,000 more seniors over the last 6 years.
Wow. We're spending time, if you're just joining us, with Senior Director of Budget and Tax Research with Illinois Policy. His name is Adam Schuster. He's the guy who is plugged into all of this. Let's go back to something you just mentioned a moment ago, and that is small businesses. I can't think of a worse time to think about jacking up the taxes on people than what we're dealing with right now with the pandemic and the fallout from it. But you said 100,000 small businesses are going to be affected by this.
That's right, and that's only under the initial tax rates. So again, I would put about as much faith in these initial tax rates as you put in, the initial rate offer you get from Comcast. It could change after 3 months, right? And you should expect that it will. But the initial tax rates would hike taxes on 100,000 Illinois small businesses at a time when they can least afford it. We had a very severe economic downturn with, the recent change in public health statistics. We've had, new shutdowns on restaurants and bars, making it harder for them to raise money the way they do, from their community through business, and they don't have the federal government to backstop them now. Back in March when this happened, there was the Paycheck Protection Program. That money's run out. It hasn't been re-upped by Congress, and so hiking taxes on these businesses when they're already, so many of them are already at risk of going under, is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And by our analysis, it would cost about 56,000 jobs in Illinois at a time when hundreds of thousands of people are still out of work.
And considering the idea, as many have before them, of heading across state lines, either in a short ride or a real long ride, maybe down to where it's warmer, to get out of here.
Absolutely. And that's, we've had 6 years in a row of population loss. Illinois has lost more residents on net to people leaving to other states than any other state in the country. People are voting with their feet. And when you ask them why, they tell you because the taxes here are too high. That's the number one reason people give for wanting to leave Illinois, is that the taxes are too high. So why would we, change our Constitution to make it easier for our politicians to hike taxes on people when they're already voting with their feet, when they're already going to lower tax states? This is just going to accelerate that. It's going to drive more taxpayers out. It's going to drive more businesses out. And ultimately, it's a self-defeating strategy to try to hike taxes in an already overtaxed state.
Adam, let's go with a hypothetical on this one, because the big pitch on this one is finally getting millionaires and billionaires to pay their fair share. If we went with 100% confiscatory, we took it all from every millionaire and billionaire in this state, we'd still be in the hole, would we not?
Yes. I mean, Illinois has $224 billion in net debt. So if you sold every asset that the state of Illinois has, you still have $224 billion in debt. The only way for our state to get this problem under control is with structural spending reform. We need to reform the way our state government spends money, get the budget, balanced, put some restraints in place, some fiscal restraints so that we can't return to that overspending, because there's only 0.3% of Illinois taxpayers, 0.3% that make more than $1 million a year. The majority of taxable income is with the middle class. And that's why most states with a progressive income tax system hit their middle class very hard. It makes it very easy to start with tax rates only on millionaires and billionaires, but then lower the threshold over time to raise more money from the people who have it, because there's just so many more of us in the middle class. And again, that's why of the 32 states with progressive income tax system, half of them, 18, hit their middle class with the top rate, the highest possible rate. So you would have millionaires and billionaires paying the same tax rate as a nurse, as Governor Pritzker likes to say.
The governor had floated out at it, before I let you go, I know we're up against the clock, had floated out that, well, you don't pass this, well, I might just have to hit you with a big old honking hit anyway on this. What are the chances of this goes down, there's a vindictiveness coming out of Springfield?
We might see that. I think it's a shame that the governor has, resorted to treating taxpayers like hostages and threatening them into trying to, pass a tax hike on the ballot and just threatening them into voting the way he wants. But I think if they were to try that, if Illinois politicians were to try to hike the flat tax, they would find out exactly why it's a protection. Groups like the Illinois Policy Institute would fight that tax hike just like we fought the last two income tax hikes in the state. And after the last one in 2017, there was a record exodus of Illinois lawmakers. About 35% of them either resigned or were voted out of office. And that's why a flat tax is a protection. We just came out of Halloween, and I say it's a protection for the same reason that when you're watching a scary movie, you root for the good guys to stick together, because it's easier to pick them off one by one. So there's strength in unity, and if taxpayers stick together and protect the flat tax, they can hopefully send a message that tax hikes are the wrong strategy and force our politicians to look at something else.
He is the Senior Director of Budget and Tax Research with Illinois Policy. His name is Adam Schuster. You want to get over to the website, read his stuff, read everything there, illinoispolicy.org. Adam, it was a pleasure having you on this morning, as it is every time we get together. I can't wait till we get together and talk again. And hopefully the result we're looking for is the result we'll be discussing.
Absolutely. I certainly hope the same thing, that voters will reject the progressive income tax. And thank you for having me on the show, Riley.
Have a great day. That's Adam Schuster from Illinois Policy, illinoispolicy.org.